Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. We are broadcasting on the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the audience, United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks, its hosts, affiliates, and or Paranormal Latte Podcast, Paranormal Universal Press LLC, and Diamond Point Entertainment LLC. This show is pre-recorded. Now that was good. Good day, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. We have quite an intriguing guest with us today. Shane Grove is in the house, and he dabbles into quite a bit of things outside of his regular job. He is a musician, he's a screenwriter, he does some acting, and he also is a very highly ranked podcaster. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how he fell into that, and also we hit on the topic of Bigfoot, but not just Bigfoot in Ohio, but also my 2 cents of Bigfoot a little bit here in Minnesota. So sit back, grab yourself something really interesting to drink, grab the person next to you, and let's get started. Please welcome to the show, Shane Grove. Well, good day, Shane, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I mean, you must really be hard up for guests, but I appreciate the invite.
You know, I really sat there and I struggled, and I thought, who could I put on next that would be so entertaining? And then all of a sudden, the light bulb came on, and your name just splashed all over it. So anyway, welcome to the show. Shane is a very interesting gentleman here, and he's got quite a resume, and we're going to get to that a little bit later on in the show. But I think we're going to just kind of have him start out by telling us just a little bit about what he's currently doing, and then we'll kind of get the foundation going, and then we'll move it from there.
Well, I have to assume that I am here because I host the podcast of From the Shadows, and and that's a show where it's similar to some of the other paranormal podcasts out there where we interview eyewitnesses. That's our favorite thing to do, is to have people come on that have experiences, and we talk to everybody, whether it's somebody had a ghost, somebody saw a UFO, Bigfoot. A popular one right now is Dogman, which is interesting because Dogman is not something that we had talked to a lot of people about, but that is why we started our show in the first place. And for those who don't know, my partner, who I started the show with, back in 2019 now. Holy smokes. Has it been that long? You can't make me look at those numbers and come face to face with that reality. But some people might be familiar with a Dogman story that is told by a municipal court judge. That judge is the guy who I started the podcast with. We were lifelong friends. I mean, since we were probably first. He's a grade older than me. He's first, second grade or whatever. Grew up, played basketball together, coach basketball. We've had kids at the same time. We still live in the same area. He is a judge in the area where we live. His name is also Shane. So it was kind of out of necessity to differentiate us. We just called him the judge. Well, he had an experience when we were in high school, and I hate to give away our age, but in the late 80s, he had an experience that I remember him having. He was out running one night along a cornfield, and some crazy stuff happened to him. And the next night, all of us guys that play basketball together were playing cards or whatever, and he starts asking us, "Hey guys, this what happened to me on the road last night while I was running. What do you think it was? What do you think was in the cornfield? What do you think could have been pacing me?" Now, of course, this is the late 80s. You didn't think Bigfoot. You didn't even know what Dogman was.
Right.
We're like, was it a deer? Come on, man. Get a hold of yourself. All right. Well, by the reaction that most of us gave him, he never told us the rest of the story. So fast forward 30 some years. It's probably 30 years. And I'm out on the mail route because my day job is I'm a mailman. And everybody who listens to the show knows that and has a lot of fun with it. But he calls me up and he says, "Hey, I figured out what it was I saw that night." And I'm like, "Well, what do you?" And I knew exactly what night he was talking about because we, as a group of guys, had talked about that night numerous times because we, over the years, we still got together and played poker. And we just, rehashing old times. And I said, "Well, what do you think you saw?" And he said he was reading a Linda Gottfried book. And he goes, "I believe I saw a Dogman." And I'm like, "What are you talking?" I go, "First of all, why do you, explain to me what you saw?" And so he described what he didn't describe to us that next night was, this creature stepping out of the corn with looking like a Doberman pinscher, like the Egyptian god Anubis is how he described it. And once that sunk in, and by this time, we're in the mid, 2017, 18, the paranormal stuff has become more mainstream.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all loved it as kids. Like, in search of the first time you saw the Patterson Gimlin film, we were kids and I'd buy every ghost book, Bermuda Triangle book, which was big in the set. Like, whatever happened to the Bermuda Triangle, by the way? Anyway, Bigfoot and all that stuff, we just ate it up. But you didn't think that stuff happened in Ohio where we lived. And so, once it sunk in, like, okay, my next thing was, so dude, you mean to tell me that a 7-foot Doberman pinscher headed creature on 2 legs chased you down the road and you let us the next night sit out in our buddy's garage a mile down the road and play cards? Like that was like, I didn't question what he was telling me because I remember the story. I remember how, frightened he was and scared and questioned like at the time. And we didn't have answers, but if he had told us that next part, I would have been like, dude,
yeah,
like this is a little too much.
Yeah.
And so once he came to grips with what he saw, he made the decision, I got to tell people, okay, I don't know, like I've wrestled with this for 30 some years. I need to tell some people. And so he went on a couple podcasts and told the story. And what happened was the one show he was on, some people sent emails and they had experiences from the same time in the same neighborhood in Ohio. Now, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And we could figure out kind of exactly where, because this is the area where this happened. We went to elementary school a mile down the road. Okay. We knew what was, we never heard any other stories. And so it really hammered home the point that something actually was happening in that area. And then, of course, the judge got the bright idea. He goes, man, we should start a podcast. I had never even listened to a podcast.
No.
I didn't even know what one was. And and so, by hook or crook, we started a podcast, and probably within the first 30 or 40 episodes, we had Linda Gottfried on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of a watershed moment for us to talk to somebody that, by now I had read some of her stuff, and to get to really talk to her about what his experience was. And she told us something that in her investigation, because Bray Road looked really similar if you looked on Google Earth to our area where he had his experience and we lived, that she was just like running out of things to try to explain what was going on. And she laid a map of Indian burial mounds over top of Dogman sightings. And it just matched, like it was weird. And so she told us that in the show. That's something we never considered. Because like I said, we grew up in this area. We had friends, this was our backyard, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the mail route a week or two after we interview Linda Gottfried, and I get this text message from the judge. And then he calls me. He goes, look at what I just sent you. And it was a link to the Ohio Department of, I don't even know if it was natural resources, whatever it was, though, it was Indian burial mounds. And in the field where the person who emailed to the program and had an experience, and the field right by the road where he had were two Indian burial mounds that we never knew were there, had no idea they were, like I said, they were in our backyard. And what we found out then from being able to talk to people is there's a lot of farmers, especially in Ohio, that have Indian burial mounds on their property. They don't make a big, the state knows they're there. But if somebody goes in and disturbs them, then the state comes in and does an excavation and kind of closes stuff down, like it's a historical site and or whatever. So they kind of don't say anything because they don't want people messing with them. Mm-hmm. So that just started us on like when those things start lining up, you're like, you think to yourself, okay, there must be something to this. And 600 episodes later, we've not run out of people to talk to about experiences. And it is like when somebody tells me, hey, look, I haven't told the story in 30 years. I didn't know who to talk to. I heard you guys, or I heard you, and I feel like I could be comfortable talking to you. Can I come on the show? Mm-hmm. Or there's people that say, hey, I want to come on the show, but I don't want to be video. I don't want to be on our YouTube, because we put stuff on YouTube. Right. But once they talk to me a little bit, they're like, you know what? I feel so comfortable with you that let's just do it. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I feel comfortable. I feel like you'll protect me or stand up for me or whatever, or it's going to be a good experience. And that is what makes me feel good, is that people trust me with stuff that, could change their lives. But the judge always says, look, I have to get elected every 6 years, even though we're in our community where we grew up, because his brother is the other judge. And his brother was like, don't you dare tell creepy. And his brother would just say, I don't remember any of that. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you were there with us when this
Well,
stuff was happening.
and I think you know as well as I do. You hit on a couple key points here. I'm really, quite honestly, you look very young in my eyes, and not to bring up the age thing, but I'm shocked to hear that you go back to the 80s, because back in the 80s, we didn't even have any place that we could go to really find a book or anything. There was nothing. It was either the devil or the angel, and we're all religious, and and all this stuff. And that this stuff didn't really exist, except when a couple teachers in my school came forward and said that they thought their house was haunted, and then they were playing around with the Ouija board. And anyway, I didn't think much of that at the time, because that was the only tool available at the time. And I'm really surprised to hear that you're kind of I call you a product of the 80s, but it's very true. You keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about this stuff. It can affect your job. Depending on who you're working for. I can attest to that very easily with everyone knows my background, between being a college professor and also in law. But the thing is, it's kind of hard to deny things when they're happening in your classroom, and you're sitting there going, yeah, well, that was just nothing. But you know darn well it wasn't. But that's interesting. The other thing you brought up, though, is credibility. Okay, so it's the only way that you earn credibility, and you figured it out, obviously, is that you're not going to go out there and BS somebody on this, that, or whatever. I like the individuals these days that actually say, you know what, I just don't know. That has more credibility to it than someone taking a guess and then being completely way off base. Because I don't know, did you investigate? Let me ask you this. So did you ever investigate? And if you did, when did you start that?
No, I mean, I've gone out. I mean, I get asked all the time. People, especially because being here in Ohio, there's a lot of Bigfoot activity that people, want, they have hot spots where they want us to go. And here's the thing. I believe everybody that comes on and tells me about their experience. Okay. Now, what am I going and this is what I tell people, what am I going to do if I run into an 8-foot tall, 800 pound creature that is not supposed, because even though I am being told these stories and I believe the people are honest in what they're telling me and what they've experienced, I still I can still tell myself it's okay to go out into the woods, or it's okay to, I can still tell myself that because I haven't seen it with my own eyes. But because I haven't seen it doesn't mean I don't believe it. But what on earth am I going? How do you don't put that genie back in the bottle? Okay. I mean, I've seen ghosts, but it didn't scare me because I didn't know that I was seeing, I didn't even know I was seeing a ghost in the one instance. It's just, I don't, I mean, I want to go out and do it once. Because the one time I did go out, I went out we were doing some other friends of ours had a podcast, and they were up outside of Oberlin, Ohio, and they lived in this campground. And these guys that had this podcast were more like you. They were intuitive people. They dealt in the paranormal. They dealt in ghosts. They didn't deal in Bigfoot. Okay. And this campground that they were at bordered this woods that went into the Cleveland metro parks. Okay. And there is all kinds of activity if you start doing the research. And so this guy got a hold of me, David Hensley. He's since passed, sadly, but he's like, hey, he goes, you're not going to believe this, but this weekend, 7 or 8 of us heard something howling in the woods. and they all heard it. They all came out from their campers. He found a recording then and sent it to him the next morning. And they all said, well, how did you happen to record that last night? And he goes, no, this is from the 70s. Okay. So it was a Bigfoot howl recorded in the 70s that matched what they heard. So they're all talking about this. And the lady who ran the campground heard them and said, you guys shut up about this. I don't want you guys talking about Bigfoot.
Right.
Don't want you to talking about. So that winter, guess what happens? The lady who runs the campground and her granddaughter have a Bigfoot cross the road in front of them. They take off after it down the farm lane because she can't believe it. So now she admits to them there's something going on. So they get this idea. I don't know if you know Amy Boo, but Amy Boo is a very respected Bigfoot researcher here in Ohio. She's part of some really cool projects and documentaries, and she's a school teacher. So she was be on their show. So their idea was, hey, all you guys come up. You guys can interview us about that night or whatever, and then you guys and Amy can go out in the woods. And so we do the interview, and it's in 2020. It's like 1,000,000 degrees. I mean, it's July. It's just, and we're sitting there, and so now they want to go out in the woods. I'm like, why are we? There's 13 of us going out in the woods. What are we going to possibly see? So we go out in this woods that we've never been in. I have no frame of reference. Two people have like thermals or whatever, and we kind of stop because we don't even know where we're at. These people that are supposed to be taking us through the woods are gone. And all of a sudden, the two people with thermals walk over to Amy and they go, these just died. These thermals just died. The battery's gone. And they had just charged them. And I'm standing by Amy and I look up, and in the distance, and I have no frame of reference, is a red light.
Oh, no.
Okay. Now, I don't know if I'm looking through the woods into a field and seeing somebody's tail light. I don't know if I'm seeing like on a cell tower or something.
Yeah.
And I go, Amy, do you see that light? And she looks up, and as she looks up, the second one appears, and for lack of a better way to describe it, looks like a set of eyeballs. And I go, do you see both of those? And she goes, yes, I do. And as she says it, it goes blank, blank, and out. Now we're like, it's got our attention. Like, we're like, what are we seeing? And she goes, well, let's walk. She goes, let's walk up because we want to see what we're seeing in the woods. Like, so we get to a point where we can tell the woods, the land goes up in a hill. Okay. So we were looking 50, maybe 30 yards into whatever was standing on a hill or whatever was there. And Amy goes, now she's kind of like, she's very under control, but now she's like, ooh, there's something weird here. I've never experienced this. She goes, let's all spread out a little bit and just be quiet. And so now, and here's why I don't go, because now I'm like, I'm not afraid. I want to know what these lights are, which is probably the reaction you shouldn't have. And so I'm like out in front of everybody with a guy who I don't even know to my left. And as we're standing there, and I mean, the sweat's pouring down me, this cold, like it's like I'm in a river of cold air comes through this woods. There's no breeze or nothing. It's just we get washed. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Washes over me and this guy. And it's like a train of cold air just ran through us. And I go, did you feel that cold air? And he goes, yes. And so I went back to Amy and I go, Amy, this is what I just experienced. And I go, I don't know if this is Bigfoot, but this is certainly seeming like it's 3 different paranormal things going on. Like sure, the batteries can go dead in your thermal. Okay. That by itself is not alarming. Okay. Sure, you could see two red dot lights. If you just saw those by themselves, you could maybe pass it off as something else. But when you start like putting those together, it's like, okay, this is something. I don't know what it was, but it's something. And so when we went back and and Amy and I kind of talked about it, we talked about it on an episode because we had no idea what was going on. Well, here those guys then in the next summer, people from the campground started seeing red, then they called them eyes, red eyes in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did we experience? I have no idea, but I probably shouldn't have. I should have probably been a little more scared and a little more wary of what, and I didn't. And so that, to be honest with you, don't tell anybody since nobody's listening. That's part of the problem is I think that I would get out there and it really wouldn't frighten me in the moment, and I'd probably not be as careful and maybe walk towards the Bigfoot or the Dogman. Like, am I seeing? And maybe that's not a good thing to do. So, because I don't really hear people do that.
No.
So,
well, and you might walk towards it, but I can add a little bit to kind of your dialogue here. Very interesting. I too have interviewed several individuals, one in particular who actually was 2 inches from a 7-foot plus Bigfoot. Another one who was standing right next to a cloaked Bigfoot. In other words, the outline was seen through kind of a camera, could kind of see it. The gentleman who was standing on this mound, just looking like this, he didn't realize that right next to him was actually a translucent, could see through Bigfoot. The eyes that you bring up with the red eyes, the other thing that goes through my mind, although I don't know how, if you've had any reports of this there, Mothman has had, I don't know if Mothman gets the award for red eyes or yellow eyes or whatever, but I've always seen or heard of red eyes and all that. But it's kind of interesting. Would you run towards it? You probably are so want to know what you're looking at. But that breeze that you felt and everything run right through you. I would say that you might have had an encounter with a cloaked Bigfoot that was charging at you or whatever, running by you, and caused that breeze to go. But if you would have really have seen it in real life, do you have any idea how you would have reacted to that?
I think if this had been in the afternoon and I would have seen one standing 70, 80 yards away, I would probably walked towards it to see how close I could have got just to I don't, and that's what kind of, I make a joke on the show that I'm just too scared to go out there and do it. And that's my excuse. But to be honest, I don't think I would be too scared in the moment, because the wonderment and wanting to know and really discover something, and not discover it so that it's not like I want to go take a picture of it or pluck a hair. So I can say, look but you just want to, this is something I've wondered about since I was 6, 7 years old. Mm-hmm. So now you see, you've tricked me. It's like a Jedi mind trick. You've tricked me into talking to myself into maybe going out.
Well,
with some of these guys.
I can tell you a story that another guest that I had just recently. He was out in the woods when he was around age 13, 14, something like that, and he was playing paintball with those guns, with the paintballs that spit out of the guns, with his friend, and he thought that he saw his friend sitting by a tree. He thought it was him, so he came up on him at so much distance and he started shooting his paintballs at this thing, which he thought was his friend, until his friend said, "Hey, where are you?" He thought he also saw him by the tree, until they realized that they were nowhere near the tree. And then what was at the tree stood up, and it was massive. He said it was, your typical 7-8 feet tall, massive being. But here he is, they're both literally shooting at what they thought was each other. And they were shooting at this Bigfoot. And I said, well, then how did the Bigfoot react? I mean, did it even feel those paintballs? He goes, you know what? It was as if it never felt him at all. It was like he just kind of got up, took one look, and just and then they were like out of there. So the thing is, I have not yet, and I'm not saying that it hasn't happened, I have not yet interviewed anyone who has, that one gal, she was 2 inches away from one. I'll tell you that story real quick. She was on a back road. She thought she saw a UFO. I think this was somewhere between Ohio and Pennsylvania, if I remember her right. And so she decided to chase after the UFO. But it brought her in a back, kind of how the dirt road, kind of gravelly, kind of, jiggy joggy. All right, so she's on this thing, and, and then she had 2 flat tires because of it. So basically, in a nutshell, she had to abandon her car, but she noticed that there was a cell phone tower, and guess what? She had 10% left on her cell phone, so she didn't have much to work with to call for help. So she was walking towards the cell phone tower to try to see if she could get the strongest signal possible. If that even works, I don't know. And she got tired, and so she was worried about cougars, and so she laid down on the ground, and she took just a brief nap because she was just exhausted. And then all of a sudden she awoke to something sniffing her. And she thought, oh dear God, it's a cougar that's sniffing me. And so what she said was well, here we go. It's now or never. So she jumps up and she goes, ah, like that. And what she was doing is, when she was doing like that, she was literally 2 inches away from about a 7-foot plus Bigfoot. So her nose was like practically right at its belly. And she looked up and she went, ah. And it looked down, and it probably didn't go, but it probably went, eh. And then all of a sudden, it just turned, and it dashed right back out into the forest. It never hurt her. It never touched her. They were as scared of each other. But you know what? Depending on the part of the United States and Canada that you live in, and you already know this, there's different personalities of these Bigfoot. So what kind of Bigfoot do you think you have in Ohio?
I think we have probably the cousin to whatever's in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh.
It's probably a little more, it's bigger,
Yeah.
I believe. I mean, that's what we hear. They seem, like you said, they're not out there to scare people. They seem to just leave us alone, and we'll leave you alone. And you only see them if they want you to see them, or somehow you completely take them by surprise. Certainly not what you hear in Florida and Texas, and those things seem but I mean, imagine being that hairy.
I know.
And being that hot.
I know.
Be aggravated all the time.
Oh yeah. Well, what about the wood ticks, for God's sakes? I mean, can you imagine the massive amount of wood ticks that would be on something that hairy? You can't tell me that they don't struggle with weird stuff like that. But then again, I don't know if you've ever heard this. I mean, we have some type of Bigfoot up in upper Minnesota, and we also have Dogman up there too. And we also have, when I used to live in Indiana, southern Indiana, Dogman was reported there as well. But they had always reported up in upper Minnesota, and I have my art gallery. I'm up there, and so there have been reports of them coming down, which means that they're coming a little bit more aggressively towards people's homes or cabins that are in the woods, and it's starting to bug a few people because they hear them, they see them, and all that sort of thing. But there's also an association here. They claim, and I'm going to ask you if you've heard of this, that when there is a Bigfoot in the area, there's also blue orbs that are also somehow seen either before or after a Bigfoot sighting. Have you heard of anything like that in Ohio, where you're from?
So I've heard lots of eyewitnesses say that, but I have never honestly on our show had anybody come on that talks about the blue orbs or
Orbs.
any orbs
Yep.
or anything like that. And part of it is probably my fault. I don't think that's not something I think to ask about, but because people know that we were open to talk about everything. I think people would um, tell me tell
Mm-hmm.
me that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've heard some amazing stories about orbs, and actually, the guys who had the podcast that we went up to the um, camping park up there. They told me some stories about some orbs, but it had nothing to do with Bigfoot.
Hmm.
But they themselves followed one, and I think they said it was the size of a beach ball,
Uh-huh.
and they just felt like it was something. It was it was a paranormal thing that they couldn't explain, but they saw because the one guy had um, the reason I got connected with them, they had Hat Man experiences, and all of his kids had Hat Man experiences, which were terrifying. So these guys were in tune to that stuff, and you know, but yeah, I've never heard anybody uh, that we've had on the show talk about the orbs. But like I said, that could be my fault.
No, it depends it depends, I think, too, on where you live and some of the things that are happening, because this was very specific to Minnesota. I haven't heard of this per se I have heard of situations where sometimes if you see a big orb or whatever, and it doesn't have to be blue, sometimes and by a lake, by a water source, a lake usually where a Bigfoot will come down to a water source. And there was a story once where a Bigfoot felt trapped by hunters that were in the area, and it felt like it couldn't escape, and so it started giving that yowl out, and somehow this big orb appeared. And it wasn't, the person was very sincere about it, took the Bigfoot and just took it out of there and relocated it to another area because it felt so surrounded. It's just, you hear these stories and you want to believe it. Here's another one I had heard, someone had talked about. There, and again, a cabin in the woods. I have really gotten a little bit afraid myself to want to stay in a cabin in the woods now, just from some of these stories that I've heard. But there's a guy in his house, and he noticed that there was a Bigfoot coming out of the tree line into his yard, and he noticed that the Bigfoot was coming towards his door, and so he got his shotgun, and he said, "You know what? It's me or it, and it's not going to be me." And so then he whips open the door, he cocks his gun back, and he goes bum 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 right at it, because it was about 5 feet from its porch steps, and the thing just disappeared. It just went poof. Now, I asked people that question of whether or not they think Bigfoot can disappear and become invisible. Well, we all know that the one guy I talked with, he had a cloaked one right next to him, so perhaps that's possible. Another one said, no, they run really, really fast. So when you're shooting at it, maybe it just ran so fast that they didn't, realize that it ran away. You have all of these stories and all these things that happen. I don't know. You've talked to a lot of people. Have anyone kind of given anything a little bit more odd or in a comparison? What kind of things have you heard?
Well, we're starting to, and I've interviewed, one of the original investigators, like at Skinwalker Ranch. I've interviewed the gentleman who's down there investigating what they call the Meadow in Georgia. I think it's Georgia, which are believed to be places where there's portals.
Portals. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
portals. And we just had a gentleman on the last week, or last week when we're recording this, in Texas, who he has some stuff going on that I just had to say, no, I don't know. But when you start hearing this stuff and all the different things that people are seeing, and it's not just Bigfoot, they're seeing what they call crawlers, they're
Yeah.
seeing different sizes,
Yep.
like little things. It's there's got to be something to the whole interdimensional thing,
Yeah.
like travel. And the best was Christopher O'Brien, the guy who was one of the first guys at Skinwalker back when it was just cattle mutilations and they couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And he told us, and he said he stood there with like three other people and watched what looked like, I mean, like I'll age us again. You know, the Bugs Bunny cartoons where they'd order the manhole from Acme and throw it on, and you could go like it was like a hole opening up that you could see into, and watching a creature step out of that hole and be like, okay, now I'm on this side and I'm going to go. And so I've also gotten reports from people who have reported intelligent high levels of intelligent clearance in various branches of the military that Bigfoot as we know it is just an alien species that the government knows about, one of many that we know about, and that they are not necessarily a alien species that is themselves, but they are part of another species, like they're scouts for another alien species, and are sent down here. They were sent down here to, you know, I don't know, but do you know? But for everything that you feel like when you start pulling on a string, like I want to see where this goes, you get to the end of it and you're like, well, that makes as much sense as anything else.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, probably what really makes the most sense is this is just a big undiscovered ape that we haven't caught up with yet. However, there's way too many other things going on for that just to be like that. But who knows? Maybe Bigfoot's sitting around together and they're like, what the heck is that Dogman thing? Did you see that? Like, what are those UFO, these orbs? I don't even know what these balls going. Like, they're like probably the same thing. Like, I don't know. And then the human was there and he saw it and he just took off and ran.
Well, what's this human? This human looks really weird, you know, and well, but you know what? I have also heard, just from talking to several, there's a road in Maine, and I'm probably going to reach out because my husband and I are going to go up there at some point. But there is a road in Maine where they seem to have an awful lot of, you mentioned crawlers. I can't remember. There's a different name for it, but
our good friend Brent Thomas thinks crawlers are what used to be called ghouls.
Ghouls.
Okay. Ghouls. Okay. And so he believes that, ghouls were like Europe, that was something in Europe, where the original werewolves and Dracula and stuff, that was part of the lore in Europe, were these creatures that were just in search of dead bodies.
Yeah.
Okay. And he thinks that's what when people call them crawlers, he thinks that's what people are encountering are things that used to be called ghouls.
Interesting.
So if you want to go to Maine and you want to go down Ghoul
Road, we're going to go down Ghoul Road, and then what's going to happen? I'm going to sit there and drive like this. And I'm saying, what the heck was that? I have an interesting story, and so we were for my birthday, actually last year, almost to the day, went to a train car up in Upper Minnesota, very popular place, bed and breakfast, had our own train car to ourselves. And this is where I actually photographed, made the paper, a shadow person that was in the hallway. I just felt something and I knew. But anyway, long story short, we were out in the creepy back. You know what it's like. You're out in farmland. You've got the corn all the way up to here and everything. You don't know what's going to come jumping out of the corn, right? So my husband and I are driving down the road and I'm going, now just keep your eyes peeled because we're looking for deer. We're looking for raccoons. We're looking for not wolves,
Coyotes.
Thank you. And so I said, no, I'm not going to hit anything tonight because it's my birthday, and that was before, this whole thing with the shadow person. But anyway, yep, something actually came out of the corn. And I said, what the heck is that? And I slowed down, and when the lights hit something, right away it's all kind of blindy, and it's kind of, you can't make it out right away because it's kind of creepy. Well, it was a cow. Okay, so somebody's cow got loose, and here we are expecting like a Dogman or something really weird or something like, wow, out in the middle of nowhere. And it was a cow. Bessie got loose from the farm and was making her way to somebody else's farm because she was going on strike or really ticked off or whatever. And off she went. There goes Bessie. But you know what? You never know what comes out of the corn. And I've actually interviewed somebody who had an experience, two people actually had an experience with UFOs that like to somehow come either out or go over the corn. And one was beamed. Yeah, he was beamed by it. And we had a long discussion about what he remembers and missing time and all this stuff. And another one, he just saw it. And there's one that just went around and went back. And so it's kind of interesting. I want to do a segment, or I don't think I'll be able to have enough to write a book, but on these weird things that come out of the corn, that kind of thing.
Well, the judge has the idea he wants to go out to the road because here's what's crazy is when he tells his story, but there was at that time in that mile there was one house, and it was a farmhouse about halfway down that nobody lived in, and he thought he could climb up the tree. That was what's going through his head, and they had cut the limbs off. Okay. His daughter and her husband just bought that house. Okay. And are redoing it. Oh, God. And so he wants to go out with our producer, Phil, who's a movie guy. He's a movie producer. And he wants to go out on Halloween, and he wants to do like a live with Phil. And we just want to do it on YouTube and Instagram and walk down Temple Road and kind of go play by play. I'm like, I don't know. I know. I mean, well, if it would be fun. I mean, we get people. You'd be amazed. People will hear that, and they'll send us pictures of the road sign, Temple Road, of them standing by the road sign, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, but I mean, I was a kid. I grew up out in the middle of nowhere where we were one of two houses on the mile. Yep. And you just walked up and down the roads at night and messing around, and you didn't really think much of it. And I'm glad because we were innocent enough not to be scared.
Well, tell me about it. I was the same thing. I was a farm girl. I mean, or at least a rural girl. I mean, I was a farm girl, but we had a tree line. We played in the woods. We went to find people's junk. Yeah. They used to throw in the woods and create forts. Yeah. That in the whole 10 years, we had fun back when I was younger. I don't know if these kids do much of that anymore and any more these days. But if I would have thought about we didn't know anything about creepy. We were too afraid of snakes and raccoons and coyotes and all things like that. That's what we were afraid of. Wood ticks. I mean, just really weird stuff. But this day and age, I don't know. I've heard so much stuff talking with people that I don't know. There's certain places I'm not quite sure. I am going to, at some point though, I am going to go to the Olympia Peninsula, if that's what they call it, up in the Pacific Northwest, because I hear it's relatively active up there, and I just kind of want to go up there and just see a little. I'm not going to explore, not very much. It usually comes to me. Would you call yourself a sensitive at all? Do things come to you at all? Do you know?
I mean, stuff comes to me, but I wouldn't say it's anything. I wouldn't categorize it anything like special. I just think it's because I'm old and I have considered all the options.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that. I mean, if I did, I'd have won the Powerball last week. I mean, come on.
Numbers can be really, really. Tell me about it. Let's see. I can't remember who won it. Texas and some other place. Missouri. I can't remember.
Yeah, Missouri.
But you know what? We're all going for it. I mean, it was like, what wouldn't this be great? What would I do with all this money? Then you'd have people sending you volumes and volumes of "please help me" letters. That's how it works with the Powerball. So you don't need the money. Give it to me. So, well, you know what? We'll have to have you back. Very interesting, very fun. You've got so much going on in your life. Why don't you tell people a little bit about if they want to reach out to you, kinds of things that you do? I can't remember if you have a book or not. I can't remember, but you do have movies, I think. So
I mean, there's some books out there. That's really a bad chapter, no pun intended, of my life. Somebody misrepresented some stuff, but there's a couple screenplays that I wrote that a guy turned into books, but they were in screenplay form, and I'm like, nobody understands that.
Right.
But yeah, we do. I mean, if you want to come check out the show, the easiest thing to do is go to our website. It's fromtheshadowspodcast.com. It's got links to all of our social media. There's a contact button on there. And if somebody listening has an experience and they want to come on and share it with us, send me an email through the contact button. I'll get back to you. You can find me at Shane Grove Author on Instagram, and send me a message if you want. Like you said, I've produced and acted in a couple movies that are coming out next year. I mean, I've got some that I was in a little movie called, maybe you've heard of Shawshank Redemption.
Uh-huh.
I was in that way back in the day as a prisoner, but I've done some stuff. The judge and I were in a documentary, Small Town Monsters. If you want to see his story, called American Werewolves, we're the first story. But yeah, we do. I write music. I've got songs cut by somebody may know who Tanya Tucker is, and Waylon Jennings' grandson Way, and Eddie Montgomery and David Allen Coe. Those guys have cut some of my stuff, and so I've tried to do all kinds of. I just try to stay busy, be creative. But yeah, you can find us there, follow us, reach out to us. If you want to watch some episodes, go to YouTube and watch. If you want to listen to them. We just are glad that anybody pays attention to what we got to do, what we're doing.
Well, and as well as I do, that our creative minds and spirits are never at rest. We like to create, and we like to explore, and we like to risk take too, whether we do it greatly or not greatly or whatever. You have to at least attempt it to try to get to greatly, but I'll have all of this in the show notes, and very interesting conversation with you tonight. Again, we'll have you back, and on behalf of the show, thank you so very much for being with us.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd be glad to come back and talk anytime.
Sounds good.
Thank you for watching and listening to Paranormal Latte Podcast. We have been broadcasting on the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Radio Networks, 105.3 FM from the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans, as well as several listening platforms. The content, music, and creative sound effects as heard on Paranormal Latte podcast are copyrighted and licensed commercially to Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Please do not reproduce in any manner without the express permission of Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz, Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Paranormal Latte podcast, and or any affiliated networks such as the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Networks. The opinions and information expressed by the guests, hosts, and sources as heard and seen on the Paranormal Latte podcast are not necessarily those of Diamond Point Entertainment, LLC, Paranormal Universal Press, LLC, Paranormal Latte podcast, and the United Public Radio and UFO Paranormal Networks, as well as their producers. Although the content of the shows may be interesting, the information and opinions within are deemed for entertainment purposes only. Subscribe to continue your enjoyment and interest, and thank you for making Paranormal Latte podcast part of your day. Now that was good.